On the cold metal lip of your feeder, with loose seed tapping like dry rain and a yellow feather lifting in the breeze, the bird facing you is seeing far more of itself than you are. That bright red face you notice first on a European goldfinch is only the part your eyes are allowed to keep. You know the look of this bird already: the red mask, the black and white head, the warm gold flash across the wing. It feels neat, almost painted, as if nature decided to be unusually precise for a moment. But the strange thing is this: the feature that makes the bird so easy for you to recognize is also one of the main ways goldfinches judge each other. The red face is not just ornament. In field guides, in garden notes, and in the long work of bird researchers and groups like the RSPB and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, that mask keeps coming back as a signal, a visible clue about quality, condition, and social standing. And here is where the world begins to tilt. Both sexes wear that red face, which surprises people who assume only the male would carry a showy mark. But they do not wear it in quite the same way. On many males, the patch runs a little broader, a little farther, often stretching behind the eye. On females, it is usually more contained, just enough that another bird, looking carefully, can read it. And goldfinches do look carefully. Their lives depend on tiny differences: who is healthy, who is established, who is worth following, avoiding, or choosing. What you are seeing then is a social signal held right on the face. A badge, yes, but an honest one. Plumage like this is tied to the state of the bird itself. A cleaner, richer, better-shaped mask is not random luck. It tells a story about condition, about how well that small body has managed the hard business of being alive. But even that is still the human version of the story, because avian vision research, including work from the University of Bristol and other labs that study how birds process color, shows that the European goldfinch is not judging that red face with eyes like yours. It is judging it with a visual system built to separate colors more finely than you can, and with access to a whole extra channel of light hidden just beyond your reach. If you like this kind of quiet reveal, subscribe, because that red mask is only the first thing the goldfinch is telling, and not the most astonishing. And that extra channel changes the face of the bird more than you might think. When the same goldfinch turns in the sun, the red mask you notice is only part of the signal. Birds do not build color from 3 cone types the way you do. Their eyes carry a 4th cone, sensitive to wavelengths in the ultraviolet channel, and that means the plumage on that small head can hold contrast your own sight never collects. Research groups working on avian color vision, including teams at the University of Bristol, have spent years modeling what this means in practice. A different color world, one where feather surfaces can reflect light in ways that matter to the bird standing 2 branches away. So when one bird studies another at the feeder, it is not simply asking, how red is that face? It is reading a fuller pattern. The edge of the mask, the way the feather surface catches daylight, the subtle difference between a cleaner patch and a duller one, that can carry meaning. To you, 2 birds may look near enough alike that you would need a pause, maybe binoculars, maybe a second glance. To them, the distinction may be immediate. This is where human confidence breaks down. You think you are seeing the signal clearly because the red is already vivid to you. But the goldfinch is inspecting a version of that same face that includes information missing from the scene in front of your eyes. Stand there for a second and picture the setting honestly. The feeder pole is cold to the touch. The seed smell is dry and faintly nutty. A breeze lifts the down at the edge of the bird's neck. It flicks, turns, and in that turn, another goldfinch can judge quality with a precision that feels almost unfair, because its tetrachromatic vision was built for exactly this kind of fine reading. Social life, pair choice, small rank decisions in a loose flock. That gets filtered through a visual system tuned to feather detail. And even here, we still have not reached the sharpest part, because seeing more wavelengths is only one layer of the story. The same eye that catches that hidden reflectance is also refining color in another way, using tiny filters inside the retina itself. And once you understand those, the mask on a European goldfinch stops looking like a patch of red and starts looking like a precision instrument. Those tiny filters are one of the strangest parts of the whole picture. Inside the retina of a goldfinch, the cones are not simply taking in light raw. In front of them sit colored oil droplets, minute filters that shape which wavelengths each cone responds to most strongly. Researchers at Lund University and other vision labs have shown that these droplets help birds separate close shades with a precision that goes beyond the cone set alone. So the bird at your feeder is not just receiving color, it is refining it as it arrives, sorting fine differences that your own eyes would blend together into one simple patch of red, one flat band of yellow, one ordinary green stem. That matters because the face mask is not floating in empty space. It sits among black, white, buff, and gold feathers, and it all has to be judged against changing light. Early sun on a clear morning is one thing. A pale, overcast afternoon is another. A bird still has to decide, quickly, whether the individual beside it looks strong, fresh, sharp, worth attending to. These oil droplets help keep that judgment stable. They increase contrast between nearby colors, trim away some visual noise, and make the plumage easier to read. In plain terms, the same head that looks merely bright to you may look far more exact to the bird studying it from a nearby perch. You can almost feel the unfairness of it if you stand under the feeder long enough. The pole smells faintly of damp metal. The husks under your shoes crack softly. The bird lifts its head, and what reaches its retina is a cleaner signal than the one reaching yours. That red is not just red. That boundary is not just an edge. The European goldfinch is working with a level of color sorting that makes your own vision feel broad brush by comparison. And once you let that sink in, another detail starts to press on the mind. Because color discrimination is only useful if the image itself is sharp enough to support it, a blurred signal, however rich, is still a blurred signal. But birds do not stop at richer color. The same creature carrying that red social badge is also looking out through eyes packed with more light-detecting cells than yours, and in many species with 2 points of highest focus instead of 1, which means the face on that feeder perch may be getting judged in fuller color and finer detail at the same time. And that changes the whole social atmosphere around a goldfinch flock. And that social atmosphere gets much sharper once you account for the image itself. A goldfinch is not reading another face through a soft human blur. Bird vision research, including work often cited by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and university labs studying avian sight, points to a retina packed far more densely with photoreceptors than ours. More sampling points, if you want the plain version. More detail held together at once. So when that bird lands on the feeder ring and tilts its head toward another one already feeding, the red mask is crisp. The feather edges, the clean line where red meets pale bill, the neatness of the black around the crown, the freshness of the whole face. Those are available to the bird in a way they are not to you from the same distance. Then there is the part that feels almost unfair. Many birds have 2 foveae instead of the single one you rely on. The fovea is the spot of highest focus, the place where detail becomes most exact. In a bird, that can mean high-resolution sight in more than one direction at the same time. You, standing below with your hands in your pockets against the chill, have to point your gaze at the thing you want to inspect. The bird does not work quite so narrowly. It can hold one kind of attention forward and another off to the side, shifting less than you would expect, missing less than you imagine. Now picture what that means at your feeder in real time. The seed tray gives a faint rattle in the breeze. Hulls scrape against plastic. One bird leans in to feed while another stays half-turned, watching. It can sample the food, monitor a nearby rival, and keep the whole scene sorted with a visual system built for speed and detail together. That changes the feel of even a quiet garden visit. It is assessment, caution, ranking, tiny decisions made in fractions of a second. And suddenly, the red mask becomes something more than a field mark in a book. It is part of a face being inspected under very high standards. The same individual you might describe as pretty or bright is being measured by others with a strictness your eyes cannot match. Which leads to a more intimate question. When two of them meet at close range, what exactly are they deciding about each other in those quick, almost casual glances? Those quick glances are doing more work than they appear to. At your feeder or on a swaying seed head, a goldfinch flock can look loose and casual. A little shuffle of bodies, a few soft calls, a flash of wing, then stillness again. But inside that calm surface, the birds are reading one another constantly. Behavioral ecologists have spent a long time showing that plumage signals in birds help sort social life. Who holds space confidently? Who hesitates? Who looks vigorous? Who looks worn? In this species, the red face is part of that reading, and because both sexes wear it, both sexes are participating in that visual conversation. That matters. You are not watching a single showy male carrying all the meaning while everyone else stays plain. The female has a signal too. She wears the same basic badge, and it tells its own truth. But the difference, slight and easy for you to miss, is often clearer to them. In males, the mask tends to run a bit farther, often reaching behind the eye. In females, it is usually held a little tighter. Not every individual fits the neatest pattern, of course. Nature rarely bothers to color inside our guidebook lines. Still, the tendency is strong enough that researchers and bird ringers have used it for years as one clue among several when assessing these birds in the hand. Now step back into your garden and let that settle into the scene. Two birds land close together on the feeder rim. One keeps a firmer posture. One gives way half an inch. One face appears just a touch broader, cleaner, stronger in the light. To you, that may register only as, that one looks brighter. To the pair involved, it may be part of a much finer judgment. Not only sex, but condition, confidence, and whether the bird in front of them is carrying itself like a good prospect or a weaker one. This is where the red mask stops being a pretty mark and becomes something more sober. It is an honest signal. Not perfect, not mechanical, not some simple scorecard stamped on the face, but honest in the biological sense, harder to fake, tied to the state of the bird itself. The visual system we have been building toward, richer color, filtered color, sharper detail, exists in part so that this honesty can be read. And once you see that, another question presses in close. If the face is telling the truth about the bird, then what happens to that signal when the body underneath it is thriving, or when it is not? That is where the beauty of the bird turns a little more serious. An honest signal only works if it stays tied to the body that carries it. In a goldfinch, The face mask and the rest of the plumage are connected to condition in the plain old physical sense. Feather quality, wear, nutrition, the success of molt, the overall state of that tiny life moving through weather and scarcity and long days of feeding. Ornithologists who study plumage signaling have been careful about this for years. Bright color in birds is often not free. It has to be built, maintained, and carried by a body that is doing enough things right at once. So when you see one bird looking unusually crisp, the red strong and even, the pale bill clean against it, the feathers lying flat and neat, you may be looking at more than luck and good lighting. And when another appears slightly rougher, with the face less exact, the whole look a little tired around the edges, that difference may matter to the other birds, before it ever matters to you. The judgment happens quickly. Condition leaves traces in plumage, and plumage feeds straight back into social reading. This is one reason the small differences between male and female never tell the whole story by themselves. Yes, the male often carries that mask a little farther, a little fuller. But sex is only one layer. Quality sits on top of that. A female in excellent condition may look strikingly strong. A male in poorer shape may not present the same authority his outline would suggest. The face is a signal, but it is not a costume. It can be dulled by the state of the bird wearing it. That is what makes it useful. You can hear this truth in the rhythm of the feeder if you listen long enough. A quick call from the branch, a brief flutter at the tray. One bird comes in sleek and settled, another more hesitant, as if the whole body is carrying a slightly different confidence. The social reading of a goldfinch is not done by color alone, and not by size alone, but by the way condition, posture, and plumage arrive together in one fast visual impression. And once you understand that, the feeder becomes more than a place where birds come to eat. It becomes a place where they inspect, compare, and decide. Not only about each other, but about the very surface they are landing on, the seed they are choosing, and the space you have made for them. That place of inspection includes the feeder itself. Once you start thinking in the bird's terms, the whole setup changes. The tray, the ports, the rim where its feet close around cold metal or plastic, the seed piled in the corner where the wind cannot quite reach. None of it is just background. A goldfinch arrives with that fine color sorting and sharp focus already online, and it uses them. The RSPB, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and every serious bit of feeder care advice keep coming back to the same practical truth. Fresh seed matters, and clean surfaces matter. Part of that is disease prevention, yes, but part of it is simpler. The bird can inspect what it is landing on far better than you tend to imagine. Think about the seed from its side of the perch. You pour it in by the handful. To you, it may look like a small drift of pale kernels, husks, dust, maybe a few darker bits mixed through. To the bird, those differences do not blur so easily. Shape, sheen, dryness, surface wear, tiny changes in color. Those can help separate good feeding from poor feeding. A seed that has sat too long, taken on damp, or started to lose quality does not announce itself to you with a sign, but the bird is working at close range, under strong visual conditions, making decision after decision with a beak only a fraction of an inch from the food. The landing place matters too. Watch one arrive and hesitate for half a beat before committing its weight. That pause is not empty. It is checking. The rim must feel secure under the toes. The approach must look safe. The space must read clearly enough to trust. A feeder that seems fine to you after a quick glance may still carry cues the bird notices. Streaking, residue, dulling, old moisture marks, the slight disorder that builds up when a surface stops being truly clean. The same eye that reads a rival's face can read your feeder as an object worth trusting, or not. And this is where the whole relationship edges closer than most people realize. Because if the bird is judging the seed and the perch and the safety of the approach with that much care, then it is also taking in the figure who refills the feeder, the hands, the face, the moving shape just beyond the tray. Which means the next question is not about the food at all. It is about what the goldfinch sees when it looks at you. And the answer is not the person you see in the mirror. When you step out with a scoop of seed, the bird does not receive a flat, familiar human shape and call it done. It sees your movement with far sharper detail than you would guess, and it sees your surfaces under a broader range of light than you can check for yourself. Avian vision researchers, including teams at the University of Bristol who work on how birds process color, have long made the same basic point. A bird's visual world is not a softened copy of ours. So the goldfinch watching you from the feeder ring is taking in a version of your presence that includes finer edges, quicker motion cues, and light information your own eyes never gather. That changes the feeling of recognition. You may think the bird knows only a human or the one by the window, but if it returns often, the details available to it are richer than that. The outline of your face against the glass, the way your hand approaches the tray, the difference between a slow, practiced movement and a sudden one, the brightness of exposed skin in daylight, the texture of a sleeve, the dark opening of a doorway behind you, the angle of your shoulders when you lean in. A goldfinch does not need to think about any of this the way you would describe it in words. It only has to see it well enough, often enough, for your presence to stop being a general disturbance and become a known pattern. And because its sight includes that extra band of light, your appearance has another layer too. Skin reflects light unevenly. Fabrics do as well. Even the same person can present differently across seasons, after long, bright weeks outdoors, after duller weather, in different clothing, under hard morning sun, or the softer light before evening. To you, those changes feel minor. To a bird already tuned to feather condition and tiny facial boundaries, they may be part of what makes you readable. Stand still near the feeder sometime and imagine the scene from its side. The tray gives a small tap in the wind. The seed smell hangs dry in the air. The bird lifts its head and looks straight at you. At you. And it is doing that with the same visual strictness it brings to another bird's face. Which means the goldfinch that has accepted your feeder may not just know the food. It may know the visual signature of the one who keeps putting it there. And once that settles in, the garden itself starts to feel different. Because it is no longer only a place you arranged for birds, but a place where one of them may already have arranged you inside its own picture of the world. And once the bird has read you that closely, the garden stops feeling one-sided. A feeder is not just a thing you set out and forget. It becomes a repeated meeting place, and the European goldfinch returns to it with memory, caution, and that same fine-grained vision that has been running through everything else here. The hands that fill the tray, the movement at the window, the shape of the space under the trees, the place where seed stays dry after rain, all of it sits inside the bird's picture now. Research on avian perception, including work tied to the University of Bristol, keeps reminding us that birds are not making weak guesses from far away. They are sampling detail with a seriousness that changes what familiar means. So your care becomes visible in a way you may never have intended. Fresh seed reads differently than old. A clean perch reads differently than a crusted one. A quiet, steady presence reads differently than a sudden, unpredictable one. You may think of yourself as the person maintaining the yard, but to the bird, you are also part of the pattern the yard has become. just present and legible. The red mask, the bright wing bars, the quick shifts of posture, all of that belongs to a creature that is also reading your habits back to you through the feeder. That is the strange tenderness in this. The bird is not just surviving near you, it is making sense of you. And because its eyes are working through that extra ultraviolet channel, because its color sense is sharpened by those tiny oil droplets, because its focus is built for detail, the goldfinch may notice things about your routine that you would never think matter. The day you arrive a little later, the day your hand moves faster, the day the light catches your sleeve and changes how you look beside the tray. To you, these are scraps of ordinary time. To it, they may be part of the difference between a trusted place and a place that has shifted. That is why this whole story lands so hard. You have been thinking about what the bird sees, and maybe how different that must be from your own view. But the deeper truth is that your small acts of care are not lost in that difference. They are entering a world with more precision than yours, not less. And there is still one thing left hanging in the air. Because if the goldfinch can read your yard, your hands, your habits, then what exactly is it saying back every time it chooses to stay? And that, in the end, is the answer. What the bird is saying back is choosing. It is returning. It is stepping onto the same rim, lifting the same red-marked face into the light, and accepting your patch of ground as a place that holds together under its scrutiny. After everything we have walked through, the finer color sorting, the ultraviolet channel, the dense retina, the honest signal written into the mask, that choice starts to feel much larger than a quick garden visit. The bird does not arrive in ignorance. It arrives having checked the food, the perch, the safety, the movements around it, and the other birds beside it. So the old picture falls away. The creature you called red, black, and gold was never only that to itself. The face was richer. The contrasts were cleaner. The judgments moving through that little flock were stricter and more exact than your eyes could follow. Even the bird's own reflection in the social world around it was fuller than the one you were given. When a European goldfinch settled on your feeder, it was entering a place alive with signals. Some carried on feathers, some on seed, some on surfaces, some on you. And yet, the remarkable part is not that your senses fall short. It is that your care still reaches across the gap. You changed the garden in the language you had. Clean water, sound seed, safe places to land, a rhythm steady enough to trust. The bird answered in the language it had, not with noise, but with presence. A bright head lowered to feed, a half turn on the perch. A second bird arriving without alarm. Then, after a pause, the small dry click of husks dropping to the ground beneath the tray. That is how the exchange becomes visible. In a place held well enough that a wary life keeps choosing it. By late afternoon, the light thins, and the feeder hangs almost still. One bird lifts off first, then the other, the gold in the wing flashing once before both disappear into the hedge. A few seed shells remain in the tray, and one feather, caught against the metal bar, stirs when the air moves. If this changed the way you look at that little visitor, stay with the channel. And if a goldfinch has ever made your yard feel briefly brighter, I'd love to hear about it in the comments.